Hello there and welcome to TelecomTV. My name is Martin Warwick. We're in Amsterdam in the Netherlands at the RAI Exhibition Centre at Broadband World Forum 2014. And I'm talking with Steve Dyatt from BT Global Services. Steve,
Martin.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Seems like yesterday, doesn't it?
A few months.
It is. Let's talk about Wi-Fi roaming stuff. Well, let's get right into sort of mobile broadband and the state of the market. What do you make about it? What's BT Global Services doing in Wi-Fi roaming?
It's some of the things that we're doing in that. It's a fairly key approach that we're taking. About 2 years or so ago, we looked at the marketplace. BT's very heavily into Wi-Fi, although it's scheduled to become an MNO again. And we're looking at things that we can do to build upon our expertise and history and pedigree of working in Wi-Fi. To that extent, one of the areas that we were looking at was how we can make Wi-Fi more like cellular, and in particular how we can assist in looking at capacity and service over traditional legacy Wi-Fi roaming today.
Yeah.
It's actually a presentation I'm going to give later on this afternoon. And it's something that we've started to talk to people about in some earnest, as we're going to be launching a service next year about it. But ostensibly what it will do is that it will allow people to, carriers in particular, MNOs in particular, to access a Wi-Fi network in a different locale securely, using correct and proper authentication methods, bring that back onto our platform, and then we'll offer the ability to interface back into cellular technologies. So much so that eventually we'll be able to take the traffic from the Wi-Fi network back into the cellular core. Now, why do that? Well, one of the reasons why we think there's something and a challenge to Wi-Fi roaming is the ability, when you buy a service, that service that you buy when you cross into Wi-Fi at the moment, it bears no shape or resemblance to the service that you buy. And an example of that would be things like age policies. So if you have an age policy on your cellular network, when you cross into Wi-Fi at the moment, it disappears. So there's obviously a challenge there between the service. And so in BT, we've started to look at how we can interoperate the cellular domains and the Wi-Fi domains to create this almost like cellular roaming, and allow the mobile operator to apply the policies that they require, which makes cellular and Wi-Fi much more similar, which means they can start to bring together and bolt together those product offerings.
Where does LTE roaming play into this?
Same thing. And it's a service that we're also launching. We're actually in trial now, but the same thing applies. So whether it's 3G or even 2G roaming, LTE roaming will be very similar. It will have a service set over the product that's sold to the end user, but when you cross Wi-Fi, it just won't happen because there's no policy enforcement that can match what the cellular enforcement does. So therefore, the only way to get that enforcement, to make the services look the same, is to bring that data back, exactly as happens in cellular roaming now.
Let's talk about mobile broadband in a slightly broader context. Back home, back in the UK, or well, not back home, in BT Global Services, what services and applications do you think are seeing the greatest uptake?
That's a really hard question. I mean, certainly we see as we talk to people, all sorts of data are increasing, and increasing at, depending where you are, double digits in usage per year. I mean, it's that much growth. As somebody I was on a panel with yesterday said, or two things they said really. One was it's time that we built another room on the house, and we'll still fill that. So how do we get out of this view? We need to make more and more effective use of all the spectrum and all the capacity that we've got. People just love data. And the other anecdote that was said on there as well, which was we've now gone beyond the devices, and there's a whole marketplace. We talk a whole marketplace about devices. The approach could be is that you have so many applications on your devices these days, your smartphones or phones as we should really call them, that your apps are you. And if you take them all off, you're just left with a voice application, and who would want to buy a phone that just did voice? So there are some very interesting statements about that. So yeah, I have to say, the biggest thing that we're seeing at the moment is the use of data.
Okay. Now then, BT is investing heavily in the network,
Yep.
in broadband, as we're well aware. If you live in the UK, you see the adverts every night whether you want
Yep.
to or not.
Infinity rules, yep.
Absolutely. So there's obviously, you believe, sufficient future growth out there, potential growth out there, to justify this massive investment. What kind of a return on investment are you talking about? How long is it going to take?
That I don't know the answer to. It's not my area of expertise or responsibility.
Right.
But BT is certainly investing in both fibre. We're now moving out and deploying into more rural areas, and taking that message and story out to those people. London is almost 100% fibre enabled. People like it. People will actually order it as Infinity or as fibre, which is if you think about it, it's a big move from where people were just buying an internet pipe or a DSL or something like this.
I know people around me who actually do that. So there you go.
Very interesting. A very interesting move in the marketplace. And there's what happens with that? Then there's a growing expectation, and what BT has been also investing in as well is that take your broadband experience outside, which is why we always built our Wi-Fi network. We have one of the largest Wi-Fi networks in the world, because it's a holistic approach. We want to be able to serve our customers, and we have millions of customers who use the service. So they can have that same experience at home and when they're abroad, when they're out and about in the UK. And therefore it's a natural extension from what we're trying to do is how we then play into that when we go abroad. So I can't answer you about the return because I don't know. But even on engagement and expectation with customers, there's something to be gained on that.
Okay, thank you. Let's move sideways then, Steve.
Sure.
Talk about the Internet of Things.
Uh-huh.
You talked about opportunities that are out there and the amount of bandwidth that's needed and so on. New studies said there's going to be, by 2020, so 5.5 years' time, there's going to be a minimum of 26 billion
30 billion devices I've read
now
as
then,
well, yeah.
So there's obviously a massive business opportunity for the world's service providers there as they try to compete with the OTT players who are out there already. But what do they need to do technically and commercially to take advantage of that opportunity?
How long have we got?
Not that long.
Not that long. I mean, there is. I mean, it'll all depend on the different business models that you'll have to actually respond to that question. I mean, and again, the different bearer types as well, and where you strategically fit as a service provider as such into that model. Personally, I think a collaboration with OTT players is coming. Certainly, you can see that in the US with tie-ups between video and cable companies, for argument's sake.
Yep.
In the true Internet of Things, that's going to be a very evolving business model as I see it. One of the presentations I just saw while I was waiting to come talk to you, Martin, was about who will own that and who will own the ecosystem, and I don't think it's been ironed out yet. I think there are end user devices, there are end user services that the end user wants to buy service to enable them to happen. And I think there will be pushes from other service providers, or other content, or you want to call them OTT providers, but other content or service providers who will need that connectivity and need that ability to be able to interact with a machine or an end user or whatever, right? And I think there are probably places in the marketplace to actually have different business models, like I said, depending on where you sit in there, where you are in the value chain, where you are in the bearer connectivity, as well as the device or the OEM that's providing that device.
Okay, thanks, good stuff. Last question.
Yes?
Is this. If you don't know personally, I'll be very surprised, but let's talk about some of your colleagues, right? You get bombarded with emails, with requests for meetings,
Yep.
all sorts from vendors who are at you all the time. Buy. You need to have this because we have this. You've got to try it.
This is the next big thing. This is the next thing you need to do. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, we've been through our entire lives seeing this, right? If for once the shoe was on the other foot and you were ultimate supremo of everything for a day in terms of telecommunications, and you had access to the vendor ecosystem and just had them there,
Yep.
what would you say to them? What would you want from them?
I think, I've been reflecting on this, I think I'd probably, if I was Lord of the Manor for that particular day, I would turn around and say work together. I mean, not totally integrate everything together, because I think there's got to be some service differentiation, but there must be a basis that vendors inside of an ecosystem must be able to interoperate together, right?
Yep.
That will probably do BT out of some business because BT is a big interoperator of services and technologies, but I think the basic level connectivity, the basic level interoperability between vendor solutions really does need to work. Now that's based upon standards and various aspects, but I would think that you need that, and then you can build on top of it between the vendors. So I don't want to lay down a law just for that day, but I'm thinking about how you would then progress forward.
No, you could promulgate it.
Well, that's what I'm
in that
trying
case,
to do.
that's
Trying
exactly
to be nice to people, yeah. But no, that's what I would say. I would say work together, give us a story that we can go to market with so that there's a base level solution, and then we'll talk to vendors about how we then move that up the value chain.
Okay, Steve Dyatt, great to see you again. Thanks for a very entertaining interview.
Thanks very much, Martin.